All right, so in this movie, I want to talk about the essential controls you'll need to use during a Zoom meeting. You can see that I already have a meeting active here, and Nick and Jess are both helping me out in this case. Thanks for joining, guys.
No problem.
All right, so let's take a look at some of the controls that are available when you roll your mouse over the screen. You see that pops open a lot of different buttons here. Here in the upper right, I can go into full screen if I want to take over the entire screen. We also have this option here for gallery view if I want everybody to be equally sized on the screen here. I'm just going to exit full screen here so I have a little more room to work. Now, looking down here in the lower left-hand corner, we have the mute button for the microphone, which we can toggle on and off. And again, generally in larger meetings, you might want to keep your microphone muted and only unmute it when you need to talk to the group. And as we looked at, you can go into settings or preferences here. And under audio, we have this option here to press and hold space key to temporarily unmute yourself, which sometimes is more convenient than having to move your mouse to the lower portion of the screen here to unmute that. We can also stop our video and start it up again. Now, next to the microphone and the camera buttons, we have these up arrows, and this is where you can choose your microphone and speakers, as well as the cameras that you might have connected to your system. Moving over here to the left, we have the invite button, and we saw this before. This is where you can invite other people to the meeting. Now, next we have this manage participants button. Now, because I'm the host, I see manage participants, but Nick and Jess just see participants down there at the bottom of their screen. But this allows me to control the experience for the people in the meeting. For example, here I can come over to Nick and I can mute his microphone. And we can see a little slash through there and we can no longer hear him if he tries to speak. Or I can come up to Jess here, and if I click the More button, we can choose Stop Video. So we can no longer see her, but Jess, you can still hear me, correct?
Correct.
Right. Now, even though we can turn off microphones and cameras, we can never turn them back on without the user's permission. So if I come back up to Jess's name here and click More, notice it says Ask to Start Video. So if I select that, she's actually seeing a message asking her to start it up, but she can actually deny that request if she wants to. And you can see here, it says Jess will start the video later. But she can turn that on now again if she wants to. And she's back. Now, I can come up to Nick here and unmute him because I did mute him myself. But now if Nick mutes his own microphone.
Okay, muting.
We notice again the slash through the microphone there, but if I click unmute, I've just sent a request to him and he has to choose to unmute his microphone, which he can do now.
Unmuted.
There you go. And there's some other things you can do here from the More menu. For example, I could choose to make Nick or Jess a host or co-host if I needed to walk away from the meeting for a couple minutes and needed somebody else to take over. I'm not going to do that right now. Next, we have the share button down here, and we're going to talk about that in its own movie because there are a lot of options to look at there. Next, we have chat. You can see that opens up another panel over here on the right. And this gives us the ability to communicate via text with either everyone in the meeting, or I can click this menu here and choose to speak to only specific people in the meeting if we need to have a private conversation. So the chat area is a good place to ask questions or to share links to maybe documents or websites you're discussing during the meeting that people can click on. Now, speaking of asking questions, if Nick and Jess go to their participants button, they'll see the option to raise their hand. So, for example, if Nick had a question while I'm talking and wanted to get my attention, he could choose to raise his hand. And notice we now see this little hand icon next to his name. So as I'm talking, I might look over and see that. I could answer his question. And then when I roll over his hand, or when I roll over here, I can choose to lower his hand, and that disappears. Now, if this chat window happens to be closed, let me just close both these windows here, and say Jess wants to ask a question and raise her hand. I see the message down here at the bottom of the screen. So again, I can click to open up the participants window. We see her hand there, and I can answer her question and then lower her hand. Oh, by the way, in the participants menu here, or in the panel over here on the right, we can also mute all and unmute all at once here. And that can be useful if you have a large meeting and you just want to have everybody start off muted so they don't have all their mics on at the same time. And lastly, over here, we have the record button, which allows you to record the entire meeting and save it to watch later. And again, we're going to talk about that in its own meeting as well. And that pretty much covers the interface options for when you're in a meeting here. Thanks for helping me out, you guys. So I'm going to go ahead and click End Meeting. Now that gives me the option here to leave the meeting, but to also leave the meeting room open if Jess and Nick still have things to discuss, or I can click End Meeting for All, which will disconnect all of us from the meeting, which is what I'm going to do. So I'll talk to you guys later.
Bye.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And now we've ended the meeting and we're back inside the Zoom desktop interface.